Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hi everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Today, we're joined by my old friend Andrew Griffith. Many of you will know Andrew, but for those who are yet to meet him, he is Australia's leading small business author. He has published 13 books, soon to release his 14th. His books are found in 65 countries around the world. They've been translated into 12 languages. He knows everything there is to know about small business because he's worked in that space, he's consulted to that space. He also teaches and helps big business relate to that space for those big businesses that have clients who are small businesses. So Andrew lives and breathes small business. Today we're having a really wide-ranging and interesting conversation about the changes that we're expecting in small business as a result of this global pandemic known as coronavirus or COVID-19. And some of the things that Andrew shares I think are really thought-provoking, because it's not necessarily going to be business as usual. It's going to be, rather than going back to something, it's about looking forward to a new normal, looking forward to something better. And Andrew's got some wonderful thoughts around that. So please do have a pen and paper handy because I know you're going to enjoy this. Now, for those listeners who are dental practice owners, I want to share with you our COVID care pack. And that is a care pack that we've put together with interviews from experts, whether it's around accountants, employment lawyers. We've produced some training there for practice managers, and we've got some training there for me, for you, a heap of things in there. Anyway, the long and short of it is it's a care pack that we've put together to help you navigate not just through the COVID period, but to come out the other side stronger and better before. And that resource is free, and you can get a hold of that at savvydentistacademy.com/SDA free. It's a gift to you. We're going to keep it up there for a while, as long as we need to, and we hope that's really helpful for you. But now we're going to have a talk to Andrew. So as I said, do have a pen and paper handy because there's a heap of stuff here that you're just going to want to take away and apply in your own practice. So I hope you find it really helpful. And here's Andrew. Talk soon. Andrew Griffith, my old friend, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang with us at the Savvy Dentist podcast. This is, I think, the third time you've been on our show. How are you today, mate?
You must be scraping the bottom of the barrel for guests. You've got me back again.
No, mate, well, every time I get you on, I know I always get a nice email from someone saying, wow, what a great interview you did with Andrew. He shared so much good stuff. So, mate, you're a bit of a favourite on the show. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. Always good to come back. And what an amazing time to be talking business, right?
Well, mate, it is an amazing time. Mate, just before we do get into what's going on presently, firstly, I know you've got a book coming out in the next few months, and congratulations for sitting down to write book number 14. Oh, my goodness me, that is a massive and monumental effort. Mate, I wanted to wind back the clock for a little bit because you and I have been through various financial situations in the past, economic shocks and so on, and we're currently recording this around the COVID time. I graduated from uni as a dentist in the mid-90s into the recession we had to have, and we've had, Asian financial crisis, we've had September 11, .com boom, bust, GFC, all that sort of stuff. And you've had your own experiences, I would imagine, going through similar things. I'm curious to ask you, does this particular situation look and feel similar in some ways to others, or do you think it's markedly different? What's your reading of the tea leaves?
It's a good question, and it's certainly one that I've pondered a lot in the last few weeks as well. To me, it feels really unique for a few different reasons. I think the uniqueness comes from the fact that it got serious really fast,
yep,
but not like a September 11 fast, where we woke up and, is this World War III about to happen with the September 11 issues? But this happened really, really fast, and I think the other part of it was it happened pretty much around the world rapidly. And if you look at like the GFC, really, depending where you were on the world, it came on at very different times. Like it hit America very fast, but it took a while for the rest of the world. It certainly took a while for Australia even to get into GFC and parts of that. I mean, there was a lot of talk, I was in Queensland at the time, that we're be immune from the global financial crisis. And of course, that proved to be very wrong. So the rate that it came on has been different. I think the sheer scale of it around the world I don't think, seen anything like that. And then probably the third part is the sheer uncertainty of it. As in, it's not like this has happened now, we're going to retaliate or, what's the globe? It's economics, but it's okay. No one's going to die from the global financial crisis bug as such. So this is on top of the uncertainty economically, we might get this and die. So there's a lot of things, and that's just a couple of things. I mean, I think it's very different.
Yep.
Even to SARS. Do you remember SARS?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, even though I was again in the tourist town, we were aware of SARS. We knew the impact coming out of Asia. It certainly had an impact on Japanese travellers and Chinese travellers, but it didn't nowhere near the significance of obviously COVID.
Yeah.
On that side. So it was a breather, but there were still people coming from other parts of the world that didn't have any SARS. So there's this big concept of, it's only really impacting people that are coming from Asia.
Yeah.
So the Americans and the British and the Kiwis and the domestic travellers are all fine. So it's a different time in my view. I mean, what's your take?
Well, I agree with exactly what you've said, Andrew. I think it's markedly different. I think some of the similarities that I've observed is perhaps around human behaviour in response to it. The fear, the anxiety, some people kind of having the mental resilience to be proactive, whereas others have gone into a shell. So I'm noticing some similarities in that, but I'm noticing a lot of differences like you've described. This is an economic challenge by every measure, but also the health challenge on top of that. And that is a different beast. That does change the dynamics markedly. And so when the economy does effectively go into shutdown, or hibernation, as ScoMo would say, it has an effect for everyone. So I think it's a very different scenario, but human responses are mirroring some of the things I've seen elsewhere. So I think it's an interesting situation.
Interesting point, mate. Very interesting.
So what I wanted to ask you around that, Andrew, is that you're obviously very well known as a small business author. You're the leading small business author in the country, but I also know that you consult to not just small businesses, but to larger businesses as well to give them insight into small business. So I'm curious to ask you, throughout this situation, what surprised you the most, whether we're referring to small or large business? What are the things you scratch your head and you thought, I wouldn't have picked that?
One of the interesting things that I've really noticed is in the corporate space is the sheer lack of creativity in actually being able to support and assist the small businesses.
Yeah.
It's like they look at those of us who work in that space and I've been asked, can you do a webinar? Like a webinar is going to answer all of the problems and solve all of the ills of the world. There's this real lack of creativity about being able to put together programs and support and information and things like that for small businesses by organisations that have a large small business customer base. I guess I don't know if I'm surprised by that, but I'm very much aware of it because I have a little chuckle every time I get an email saying, can you do a webinar for us? And go, to what end? Yeah. How about we do a 6-month program? How about we do something a little bit smarter than just do a webinar on how to survive COVID-19? So I guess that's one interesting element. I've been surprised by the level of government cooperation. I think that's been really interesting. And I think the government's done all governments have done a great job of managing this in Australia and just in Australia. There's been some corporates that have just been fabulous, that have just got it. And then you get other corporates that have got no idea. These people that don't realise that this is a brand building opportunity. I look at MeBank in particular. I'd probably single them out to say that they just, started doing silly things and, people panic and all the rest of it. So like most of these crises, it brings out the most extraordinary and it brings out the worst. But I've seen an incredible amount of innovation. I've seen an incredible amount of stuff that we thought we couldn't do. Corporates, well, we can't do that. People won't do this. They won't, our staff can't do this. They can't work from there. And there were a lot of things that can't happen that have happened.
Yeah.
And I personally, as a business observer and a commentator, I'm loving it. Every week I'm doing a show, Jesse, talking about innovation from around the world and what am I seeing? And it's just mind-boggling and mind-blowing to see the incredible innovation, cooperation, new products, social good, even, at a corporate level, some just some really good corporate behavior that you go, wow, people are doing stuff here that is really pretty impressive. It's a fascinating time to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I think in 20, 30 years' time, we'll look back at this particular moment in history, and our hope is that we'll look at that and think, wow, out of something terrible, an amazing amount of good came from, whether it's the innovation, and maybe it's either even social cohesion, the fact that we're caring for each other a bit more now. We had a lovely neighborhood thing happen the other day where we got this lovely letter through the mailbox, and it was just some people who said, look, even in this time of social isolation, social distancing, we're trying to make sure we're connected. If you need anything, here's our number, here's our email address. If you need to pick something up or whatever it is, and obviously, we're okay, we don't need that. But I thought that was just a really nice thing, and I don't think that would have happened had it not been for this. And so my hope out of all of this is that as a community, we remember those things that make us all human, that connection that gives us meaning and purpose and all those other sorts of things. So I'm hoping to use the word that's commonly being used at the moment, that there is a bit of a reset and we do reevaluate our priorities and we do reevaluate, all the things that are important to us. And that's my big hope out of this whole thing.
Well, and there's a camaraderie that comes with a shared survival of something and a shared managing of a situation. If we're on a plane that crashes and there's 100 of you who survive, there's something that comes out of that. I know from, again, living in North Queensland, when there's cyclones around, a cyclone comes and goes and you've survived it, there's this thing that we've gone through this together and survived. And that brings really a lot of cohesion when you think about it. When you survive a financial time. I mean, I remember in Cairns, where I lived for 30-odd years, during the global financial crisis, every major employer, every company, every business that employed more than basically 200 people went broke.
Wow.
And so you lost this. It's like a forest where all the biggest trees that have been around the longest and the biggest history all went broke to the stage. A couple of public companies, big organizations in a little town of 150,000 people that went broke. And the sheer impact of that on the town is a really big crisis as well. So, but it does seem to bring people together. And often I think the greatest parts of humanity, well, I'm sure of it, come out of the most challenging of times. And we know that, we talk about it, we understand that, but it's amazing to see that. Once we got over the initial fear, the first couple of weeks of COVID was pretty ugly. Yeah. In reality, people, the toilet paper fighting punch-ups and the this and that, that's almost forgotten about now. Yeah. We almost look at that and go, we're happy to line up. No one's getting too grumpy about standing in a line. We can, I'll join a queue with half a dozen people to get a coffee on my morning exercise kind of, thing or whatever it is. And there's this inherent understanding where we're kind of going, you know what, maybe we just chill out a bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe we just kind of relax a bit more. And I'm seeing that in business as well, going, well, we're all home mostly. And yet, we're kind of doing what we're doing. And it's kind of like, well, people maybe just being a little bit more human. And it'd be nice if that sticks around afterwards. I think it will. I'm hoping it will.
I hope so too, mate, because like you, I think it breeds a gentler, more compassionate society. And I think for some of us, we got caught up with the busyness of what we're doing. There's always something to do. And I think that I can say pretty safely that, myself included, that, it's easy to be busy being busy. And I think having that opportunity to stop, sit back, review, reflect, all those other sorts of things is going to be really interesting. And like you, I hope that there's going to be some changes. And I think all of us in business have got the opportunity to, rewrite how we do business. We've got the opportunity to have that blank piece of paper or that blank canvas, and really create the life that we want out of our business. And, one of the things that, we've spoken about off air a lot, Andrew, is, growth for growth's sake. What's the point? When is enough enough? And I'm curious if you've had any insights or in your dealings with your clients or other people, whether that's a conversation that's come up as well.
So much. And I think that that's a part of the time that we're in. And I think this was happening before. It came along. I mean, you and I spoke about it. That was not that long ago, and that was pre-COVID, Jesse.
Yeah, I know.
What's that all about, right? And I mean, I've seen it myself. I think that we're tired of, the hustle, with this terminology, build an empire. I mean, my take on that is, if you want to be the next Uber, I love and admire the fact that that's what your thing is. If you want to build an empire, that's awesome. But there are so many businesses that don't want that. But people were almost made to feel inadequate if they weren't aspiring to build an empire. It's literally like it used to be many years ago. Jesse, if you said to me, oh, yeah, I work from home, I'd go, don't worry, mate, things will pick up. It'll get better.
Yeah.
Then we went through a stage where I would have people saying to me, oh, you work from home and you live in Cairns, like CEOs of big companies like CBS and, St. George Bank, National Australia Bank, the CEOs would go, you live in Cairns and you work from home. How do you do that? Can you show me how to do that?
Yeah.
Beg you, teach me how to do that. So we went from you're at home making spice racks in a sheltered workshop in your garage and don't worry, things will pick up to, oh my God, that's amazing. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Can you teach me? Can you coach? Can you show me the ways, Buddha, to lead that enlightened life until I guess that where we're at now, which is almost somewhere in between. And I think that there are a lot of people that are going, you know what? You want to build an empire? That's okay. But I don't. And I'm not going to feel guilty about not wanting to build an empire. And so there's this pushback, this slower business movement. This is not a plug for my book, but it sounds like it is. It's like the whole concept of my book is someone's got to be the most expensive. It may as well be you.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about there is if you're going to be the most expensive, you've got to be the best. And it's a push back to a simpler time where we actually I want to do one thing and I want to do it really, really well. And part of this is driven by the hipster apocalypse that we're in now, which is fabulous. And I love it dearly because people are going, you know what? I want to buy a block of land. I want to grow 40 cows with my wife, with my kids or partner, whatever it looks like. And we're going to make Camembert cheese and we're going to go to the markets every Saturday and sell the best Camembert cheese in Australia for a ridiculous amount of money. And people are saying, I want to just master my craft. I want to do what I do really, really well. I want to go back to that kind of a life. And I'm seeing that happening all over the world where if someone says, you know what, I want to write books. I want to do this. I don't want to employ 25 people. I don't want to employ 1,000 people. I don't want to work 80 hours a week. I want to just do what I do and do it really well and get paid accordingly. And it sounds ridiculously simple, but very few business owners are in that position.
I love that, mate, because it's a bit of the return of the artisan in a sense, isn't it? You've got the dare I say, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, but they're all, superior craftsmen in their own right, or craftswomen if we're going to be PC about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's absolutely right. And it's really interesting, Andrew, because, again, that I talk about scaling a lot, but I think that word has been misappropriated to mean things that I don't mean it to mean. And I think for me, scaling is about creating life on your terms. It's about creating the ability to be up in Cairns, working from home, and still, working with companies like CBS. And to me, that is a scaled enterprise because it's life on your terms. Whereas a lot of people think that it's, it's about having 27 locations and build an empire and, employ 3,000 people and all of that sort of stuff. And it's crazy. And again, like you, if that's what people want to do, knock yourself out. That's great. I'm here to cheer you on and wave your flag as best I can. But I think that the word scaling has been misappropriated. And the other word that I think, if I hear another word, hustle is one word that kind of makes my skin crawl. But here's another thing, Andrew, because again, I know you and I have spoken about this off air a little bit. The word entrepreneur in dentistry, going back years ago, if someone was to call you an entrepreneur, it was the biggest insult someone could give you, because when you were called an entrepreneur, the inference or the implication was that you cared only about the business side of things. You didn't care about people. You didn't care about your craft. You're only interested in the buck. And then all of a sudden, entrepreneurialism got cool, and everyone's in the backseat of an Uber recording a selfie video. And I kind of feel a little bit like entrepreneurialism has gone from being totally out of vogue to being way in vogue. And I'd love to get your thoughts around that just for a second.
Again, it's a fabulous kind of question. If you ask most small business owners if they're an entrepreneur, most of them would say no.
Yeah.
They don't see themselves as entrepreneurs, And I think what you're saying is true. And look, we're both singing from the same hymn sheet. Of course, there's that reticent frustration even that we have with the backseat Uber experts.
Yeah.
And the people that are telling us and selling us on a better life and a better alternative and a better future for tomorrow. I have zero tolerance. And part of my problem is that I know half of these people, and I know that there is no financial substance behind them. And they're just ripping people off left, right, and center. Yep. And it's so, it's like their business, it's a house of cards, because their business is about teaching other people to have that same entrepreneurial kind of way of thinking, but not actually do anything of any significance. These programs don't teach people how to run a profitable business. No. They don't teach people, the basics. They don't teach people about how to read a balance sheet. Yeah. They don't teach people how to charge accordingly. They don't teach people how to actually, manage people, teach their teams, all of this stuff that you would look at and go, that's kind of business 101. If you can't get that stuff right, you'll never get a business successful. Yeah. But it's actually not about it, getting it successful, because it's about just coming up with the next buzzword, next term. And I don't want to sound like a grumpy old, business guy. It's just that I see so many people who've got a warped view on what it is to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. And they lack any tenacity, any grit. And a lot of this, Jesse, is because there's nothing on the line. I remember, when I bought my first business, I had to, and I know it sounds like, when I was a boy, and when I was a boy, I had to go and borrow. I remember, you're borrowing, your house is on the line, everything's on the line. Man, I tell you what, you don't give up when your house is on the line. No. Yet a lot of the backseat Uber guys have no debt. It's all on the back of a credit card. And if it doesn't work, they just go, oh, well, mum and dad will bail me out. Or if it goes broke, so what? I lose 20 or 30 grand. You start having $1 million on the line, and all of a sudden failure is not really an option. No. So I guess in a grumpy old white guy kind of way, what it really means for me is that it's a time when the term entrepreneur has become very sexy. Everyone wants to be a Gary V or a Richard V, and they don't really kind of get what it's about. Yeah. And in my opinion, and it's about so much more. I mean, small business owners were such an integral part of the community in the past. All the civic business leaders were, on all of the not-for-profit boards, and they were the ones that drove these towns and did all that kind of stuff. And you look at that and kind of go, wow, that was a role that people played. You were a part of the community when you were a small business owner, not because it was cool, because that was the right thing to do. And now in a virtual world, it's easier to be a backseat Uber guy saying, aren't I cool, but not actually contributing to a community, not actually making a difference, and creating a lot of activity without actually creating a lot of substance, I think. And again, ridiculously generalized, and I do get there's some amazing virtual companies and startups that do incredible things. Yeah. But if I go to Gary V and I look around the room at the people that are in the audience who want to be entrepreneurs, there is a definite lack of substance there. And they're in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur and just swanning around, and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to have a startup, I'm going to make $1 billion. I don't know what comes after that for them, but that's just not the reality of doing business.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's exactly right. And that's, sometimes I scratch my head, and maybe, Andrew, we could be those two guys in the Muppets, that sit in the balcony, the grumpy old Muppets guys, because I feel a bit like that as well. Whereas once upon a time I thought being called an entrepreneur as an insult was, way out of line and, unreasonable. Yeah. Equally now I see these people, because they've got, 3,000 Instagram followers, not producing anything, calling themselves an influencer or an entrepreneur. Again, I just think, same as you, when you scratch the surface, I'm waiting to find something, and where is it? Yeah. What's beneath that surface? And really not a great deal. So coming back to the point is, I think, that whole substance, being able to read a financial statement, a balance sheet, a P&L, a statement of cash, being able to build a team, being able to deliver your product to a really high standard is also certainly important. And one of my, again, I'm probably sounding like I'm on my soapbox a little bit, Andrew, but one of my pet peeves is, marketing, as the entrepreneur or as an expert, but not being able to deliver something of substance or of quality, because, again, I just think, what's that about? We're good at marketing air, but we've still got to deliver a really rock-solid product in all of that. And I think for the dentist listening, that's everything, right?
And Jesse, I don't think it's an age thing. I don't, even though it probably sounded like I was being dismissive, there is definitely an age that it is attracted to the backseat Uber entrepreneur kind of story that's getting sold.
Yeah.
But the people that I buy from and work with and look at, like just in my local area where I live in Melbourne now, I look around at the cafes and the bakeries and the restaurants. They're staffed by people under 35. And I see incredible people totally committed to their craft.
Yep.
Like my local bakery down the road there, one of the bakers there, Jody, she's amazing. She would be lucky to be 30, and you would not meet anyone more passionate and driven. And she asks, she wants to know, are you baking at home? How's it going? Can I help you? Here's my mobile number. Call me if you want. If you need an emergency call because your starter's not responding, and you're seeing these people that are doing unbelievable stuff.
It's unreal.
But what I'm seeing though is that thing again that's saying, you know what? I want to make the best sourdough bread in Melbourne. Yeah. I want to be the best tattooist in Melbourne. I want to be the best, bagel maker, or I want to be the best car detailer. And I love that shift back to that, because to me it feels like there's a substance that's coming back. And there's also people understand integrity. And I need to build a business with integrity that meets my values. And I want to work with people that meet my values.
Yeah.
And I want to be paid accordingly for doing that. I want to make $100 million for doing nothing.
Yeah.
And this is where that lack of reality is. So I'm going to get out of the corporate life. I'm 25 and I'm getting paid $100,000 a year, and I'm going to become an entrepreneur and make $10 million a year. And you're going to go, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. It's just, and unfortunately though, the one that makes it out of the 10,000 that don't is the one that becomes the household name, and everyone thinks, wow, I'm going to just become an Uber or a Canva or a Richard Branson or whatever it might be.
And I think, look, again, I'm not down on entrepreneurialism. I'm all for entrepreneurialism. I think entrepreneurialism is a great force for good, but I'm also just wanting to make sure that, again, there's substance, like you said, and I really endorse what you're saying, Andrew. I love the fact that, Jody, your baker, gives you baking tips. My barista down the road here, we've got a little restaurant down the road called Trev's, of all things. And I know, it's how Australian can you get Trev's?
I love it.
It is as dinky-die Aussie as you can get. The food when the restaurant is open is amazing. Here's my plug for Trev's restaurant in Canberra. But they make a bloody great coffee there. And every time I go there, they're doing something, they're fiddling there, and they'll just say, oh, look, we're experimenting with this, we're doing that. Hey, have a look at what we're doing. And it's great because they're like your baker, Jody. They're trying to be the masters of their craft. And they're a small business. They do very well because they're really good. And, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And, on a bright note, you're right. This is happening, and it come back to your original kind of thinking. This is the shift. And this is what I'm seeing now around the world, not just, in downtown Melbourne or Canberra or Perth, but this is happening in New York, in London, in Africa, all throughout. It's where people are starting to say, you know what, I'm prepared to pay for quality. I know that I can find what I want now because I've got the intranets and I'm able to find that. And I want to find those people that are just mastering their craft and go, who's the best person? And I know now, aren't we all the same, that we'll drive across town for that one thing that's probably cost less than $10 because it's the best.
Yeah.
In Melbourne, that's all we ever do is drive all over the place for your dosa or for they're the people that make the best pizza or the best coffee, or you buy your cheese from here and, you go to these crafts people. And that, I think this concept applies to every industry. And I think it applies to every kind of business, that you can build a business where if you really are the best at what you do and that's what you aspire to, because I know it's a nebulous thing to say, well, what makes you the best.
Yeah.
But if you aspire to do that and you have the great integral alignment, you have the right values, you'll find the right customers. And we're moving away from this price-driven, I've got to be the cheapest mentality, which is just a disastrous approach to doing business, I think. And it comes back to those businesses don't survive a time like now because they've got no fat.
Yeah, totally.
In the GFC, the businesses that fell over quickly were the ones that had that they were too lean. They didn't have enough because they didn't know what a balance sheet was and they didn't know what the gap was on their balance sheet, which showed they didn't have enough assets. They didn't have enough, stuff to sell. They didn't have enough cash, whatever it might be. So amazing times. And I think that this is going to be driven forward going ahead from here too, Jesse, that your point you made earlier, there's going to be a lot of people going, you know what? I don't really want to work 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of this build an empire. I just want to build a really good business that serves me, serves my family, that I enjoy doing every day. I get to work with great people, whatever that looks like, either customers or my team. the end of the day, I go home and I go, you know what? I had a great day today doing what I love and doing it with people that I love to deal with. And I think that's what the future looks like for many of us, certainly for me.
I think so too, mate. And again, off air, we were talking about moving forward into something rather than going back to normal, leaning forward into a brighter future than what we had in the pre-COVID times. And I'm all for a bit of re-engineering and a bit of reorganization of priorities and reorganization of businesses, because I think for the people listening to this, you would have heard on this show various people say that there's a difference between success and fulfillment. And I think commercial success without fulfillment, for me at least, and this is just my own values, is a little bit hollow. And I think the fulfillment part is as much an art as anything. Do you have a thought on that, Andrew?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm quite happy to drive a Maserati, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that it's, again, that I know what it's like to get caught up in a grow mentality.
Yeah. Yep.
I know what it's like when, I spent a lot of my earlier life where my business was my primary focus and it impacted on my health, certainly my marriage, my relationships, in the past. Not to try and make $1 billion, but it's just that business always came first.
Yeah.
And it was always a priority and it was always for something that I was building rather than going, you know what, it's kind of nice to be contented. And that's not a word that a lot of business owners really use, is contentment. And I think it's a word that we need to use more. And we need to make our businesses suit our lifestyle, not change our lifestyle to suit our business. And I think that's part of the shift that has to come.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. And I think there's going to be some really good things that come out of this. I'm really optimistic about the future, actually, Andrew. I think that, I wouldn't wish COVID on the world by any stretch of the imagination. And I know that there's a lot of people who are doing it tough in various sectors of the community. And I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. But I do really believe that there will be some positives, some significant positives that come out of this. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what that future looks like, because I think it's an exciting time, mate.
Yeah, I agree, Jesse. And, I think, again, that everyone is going to be stopping and taking a bit of stock. And we go, okay, well, this is what I really want. And that's a nice thing, because this is a bit of a gift this time, as problematic and complicated and sad and all that for various people around the world. I completely get all of that stuff. But it's a gift if we can stop and go, you know what, I think I need to just pause and just really get back to what is it I want to do. And normally the only time we get this opportunity is when we're lying in a hospital with tubes attached to us, or, we have a relationship breakdown, or we have, something else that happens, and then we go off, have a midlife crisis and go, hey, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to buy a red Ferrari and grow my chest hair. And I look at that and kind of go, the gift that's come out of this is we've had a taste of what could be. Yeah. And it's a really interesting reset. And I am having this conversation with people all over the planet at the moment, Jesse, and it'll be interesting to see, does it stick, or do we just go back to the way it was? That'll be the telltale, I guess. Yeah. And we'll all be experts on that in a year's time. But anyway, for now, we can live in hope, my friend.
Absolutely. Hey, mate, you've been incredibly generous with your time today, Andrew. Just really quickly, before we wrap up, mate, when is your next book out, please?
Well, it was due out in June, but I've put it back a little bit. It'll probably be August, I think, at this stage, Jesse.
And people can get it from?
Everywhere, usual. Amazon's, Booktopias, andrewgriffith.com. Easy to find. Hopefully it'll be everywhere. I'm sure it will. So, yeah, I've better finish it now.
I know that feeling.
I feel under pressure, Jesse.
Oh I know. So, ladies and gents, by August, the book will be out. Come what may, because you've heard it here first. I'm only joking, mate. I'm only teasing you.
Love it. No, I like that. I work better with that kind of stuff. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
August deadline. Hang on. I'm putting that on a Post-it note. It's a little bit kind of open-ended when you're doing your own kind of books. Like, it's around then. I'll wait for this COVID thing. August publication, if not before.
Well, ladies and
you can't see this, Jesse, but it's a Post-it note on my computer now. And I'm putting your name underneath it.
Perfect. Well, I happily participate in that. Ladies and gents, I'm going to really commend Andrew's book to you. I've had some conversations with him about the material in it. It's fantastic. I think it's a book that is right for its time. And as Andrew seems to be able to do with all of his books, he's able to read the mood and put some practical information out there for all business owners, but particularly small business owners. And, book number 14, mate, congratulations. That's an unbelievable and Herculean effort. And, mate, from all of us here, I thank you for your time today, and I'm looking forward to a good read in a few months' time.
Good on you, Jesse. Thank you, mate. Always great to chat to you and to have a grumpy old man conversation about what's going on in business.
I know. Now we just need the Muppets music to cue us out, don't we?
I know. It's hilarious. But I feel a lot better. I do feel like we've just had nice little therapy sessions. So hopefully that's had the same effect on a few of your other listeners, mate.
All right, mate. Well, thank you once again.
Thanks, Jesse.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.